ice, the smell, the single dripping tap in the mortuary that was our water supply, and the overarching sense of the futility of terrorism. I'm not sure it has ever really left me. Back home, my working life was feeling insecure. The world of forensic pathology was changing, and we were now threatened by new uncertainties of a sort the great Simpson never had to face. The university medical schools had always paid us to lecture in our subject, but they decided, almost all of them, one by one, that now they would not continue funding or teaching forensic pathology. The main reason they gave was lack of forensic research and lack of publication in prestigious scientific journals. However, we were too busy with postmortems and coroners and courts to meet these new benchmarks of a good university. The age of intellectual evaluation through research assessment exercise had arrived, and we forensic pathologists were found wanting. Gradually, medical schools with great traditions of forensic pathology closed down departments, and it wasn't long after Ian West's death that his kingdom at Guy's disappeared. St George's hung on a bit longer, but my new department's warrant for execution had been signed. We had essentially been privatised. From now on, instead of providing forensic services for free, our salaries paid by the universities at which we taught, we would directly bill the police, coroners or defence solicitors for payment. I knew that without a salary, it would be hard to continue with some necessary but unpaid work. I'm talking about public work, like my ongoing contribution to teaching the authorities safe restraint methods, and my participation in disaster planning. Everyone else at the group was salaried by the police or some other organisation. I no longer had the weight of a university behind me. Not only was the regular income gone, so were lectures and so were students, except at just a few specialist centres outside London. I had only ever lectured to packed halls and knew how interesting medical students found forensic work. I also felt that at least the rudiments of forensic medicine should be an important part of their training. Every doctor, no matter what their discipline, should be able to identify the signs of suspicious circumstances so that they would know when to call an expert or the police. But there was too much real medicine competing for too little space in the training schedules, and forensic pathology now became accessible only on specialist postgraduate courses at few universities. I set up a group called Forensic Pathology Services, widely known as FPS, through which pathologists in London and the southeast of the UK would operate in our brave new privatised world. And suddenly, while I was buried deep in its planning and organisation, I realised that I might not want to be a part of it. With a heavy heart, I had dropped Anna off that autumn at university. She had finally decided to study medicine. So they were gone now, both of our children, to the north of England. Of course they still needed us, but not in the same way. Our house seemed large and empty and quiet. Was that why we were spending more and more time on the Isle of Man? That home was nearer the children than London. Was it because, as my lectureship duties at St George's were being wound down, there was little to keep us here? Was it because we loved our cottage on the island and wanted to support Jen's now widowed mother? Not that Maggie had let widowhood stand in the way of her social life, and in fact were now ourselves becoming part of her whirl. Or was my work in London beginning to weary me? Weary me so much that even flying on Friday afternoons could not restore me. Every court appearance seemed to turn into a bruising scrap, and sometimes I felt I lacked the resilience to cope with it. There was no longer a bounce in my step when the police called me to another crime, another body. I had given up hope that they would ever phone me for my opinion on a case, and, looking into the future, I could see that pathologists eventually could be tendering for contracts, competing for bodies, even undercutting each other on price. Forensic pathology was a service, but no longer the intellectually rigorous world I had entered, with its scope for debate, study, and social change. Jen had become disillusioned with her work too. Despite her amazing feat in becoming a doctor so late in life, once she was practicing as a GP, she found she did not really want to be one. She had always been keen for us to move to the Isle of Man, and believed that here she could practice her own specialization, dermatology, and live in the place she wanted to be. What else pushed us there? Our knowledge of our own senescence? A longing for the lifestyle Maggie and Austin had enjoyed? A hope that, if we spent more time isolated together on an island, somehow the loving communication which was missing would suddenly reappear. Perhaps I, and perhaps Jen too, was having that thing people call a midlife crisis, which no pathologist has ever been able to locate within the human body, not even under a microscope. But when I was asked to write the 12th edition of Simpson's Forensic Medicine, the 3rd edition of which you may remember had lured me into this profession, the invitation felt like a huge honor, and an excuse. So I was midwife too, but did not remain with the new forensic pathology services. Instead, Jen and I left London for good. We gave up the tidy hedges and neatly mown lawns of Surrey for a windswept and beautiful cottage on an island somewhere off Liverpool. I was generally believed by my colleagues and contemporaries to have completely lost my marbles. I was very happy and busy renovating the cottage. We went walking for miles over wild and windy moorland under big skies that were sometimes so clear we could see across the water to where the mountains of Mourne sweep down to the sea. We sat by the fire while gales whistled outside, or we just stared across the fields to the ocean as it conjured up dramatic storms from its depths. I did not carry out a single post-mortem. And here we had a social life. We had